My name is Darren Hupke, and this is Pixels and Polygons, part of the Soundstone Network. Welcome to a new episode of Pixels and Polygons. I am Darren Hupke, the host of the show. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back and checking out another episode. Hopefully this is another entertaining one for you, and I appreciate you for coming back week after week. If you are new, it's a simple pitch. I sit down with a guest each week and I ask them a video game related prompt or question, and we talk about it. It's 20 to 40 minutes or so each episode. This can stem from topics like what's a underappreciated or below average game you love that doesn't get enough attention, or what is your history with video games? When did you start playing and when did you fall in love with them? Or why do you play the games that you play? It could be a lot of different things. The conversations can go in a lot of different directions, but the point is just to have a great and thoughtful conversation that maybe sparks your own ideas or your own interests as a listener to think about your own responses and hopefully just have some fun along the way. If you like what you hear and you want to support the show, I've got a few different ways you can do that. I have links in the show notes below to everything that I do, and I'll highlight one of those in particular. Beat 'em Up Volume 1 is a love letter to the genre. Volume 1 of the series breaks down the Final Fight franchise and covers the entire series. So you get histories and development details, artwork, screenshots, magazine scans, a lot of artifacts from the era covering every game in the franchise, from the 1989 arcade original all the way up to 2006 and the release of Final Fight Streetwise. There's also chapters that cover where this series is now, its appearances in other properties like Street Fighter, comics, TV shows, cartoons, all those types of things. So if you're a fan of beat 'em ups, if you're a fan of Final Fight, this book has all the history and all the details I hope you will enjoy and love and find something new about one of my favorite franchises of all time. You can buy it physically over on pixelsandpolygons.net, but you can also buy digital copies over on my Patreon shop. Links to all of these will be in the show notes below, but check it out. Beat 'em Up, Volume 1. With that out of the way, we can start the episode right after an ad from one of our Soundstone Network partners.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I'm Nick McConnell, and you caught me reading the instruction booklet for Street Fighter II in preparation for my weekly stream Instruction Derby, where I take a look at the creative, fun, and sometimes bizarre lost art of video game manuals. Did you know that, according to the manual for Street Fighter II on the Super Nintendo, Ryu was born in 1964, making him 62 years young, canonically? Happy birthday, Ryu. You're looking great. Did you also know that, per the manual for Laser Invasion on the Nintendo, the UN enters a conclave in order to select a new commando? Or did you know that the dancing enemies in Super Castlevania are named Paula Abgul and Fred Askare? These important facts and many more are discovered every Wednesday at noon Pacific on Instruction Derby over at internet website twitch.tv/Nick McConnell. Part of the Soundstone Network.
All right, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Pixels and Polygons, a conversational podcast about video games. I am Darren Hupke. I am back again, wandering into the Forgotten Worlds with Mikolai. Hello, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, folks, and Darren, thanks for having me back. Mikolai here from Forgotten Worlds, a magazine about old and classic video game magazines, and also the idiot who published a magazine all about the box art on the back of Sega Genesis / Mega Drive cartridges. So that's me.
That's I mean, I don't want to say idiot, I mean, you love what you love and you do what you do,
Let's say it's niche.
No, but this will be our second episode. Technically, we're recording this before your first one is released, but it will be released in a couple of days. But it's good to have you back and talk with you more. That last episode was really fun. So if you are listening to this, that means the first episode is already out. And if you haven't heard that, you can go back in the podcast feed to listen to it and hear more about Mikolai and the zines and all the projects that he does and our interest in old gaming magazines and everything. It was a good conversation. But today we're going to talk about something different. Before we get into that, though, well, you spoiled it now. Now everyone knows. There's no point listening to the rest.
Just delete that in post-production.
We're not going to do post. We're just going to go right on through. We're going to keep it in live. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about your console story, and we are going to talk about the Mega Drive. But before we get into that main topic, are you playing any modern games? Are there things that have recently come out that have kind of caught your interest that you've kind of played through and enjoyed? I'd love to hear maybe.
Yes. No. I was going to say, because top of mind right now is Dragon Quest VII. And do I buy the Switch edition, which comes on cartridge, or the Switch 2 edition, which is kind of like a half download, half not, on cartridge type thing?
Yeah.
So, a new edition of a classic game. I am loving like the Dragon Quest remakes.
Yeah, I am loving those too. I haven't bought 7 yet. I am still in my way of 2 in that 1 and 2 HD 2D remake. But I loved 3. I loved 1. And I'm really excited to get to 7, but I want to finish up 2 before I do that.
Yeah, to me, it's just pure comfort gaming, right? You just dive in, explore the world, lovely graphics, some great storylines. So I guess I'm playing or intending to play that. I got my little, end of year wrap up from Nintendo recently, and it said I played 77 games last year.
Oh, wow.
Which feels like a lot, but I think I dedicated more time to certain games than others. So yeah, I try to mix it up, old games and new games.
Well, then besides games, has there been a book or zine or something around gaming that you've read recently? What was the last book, zine, or even article that maybe you've read recently that you caught your eye and enjoyed?
Good question. I like A Profound Waste of Time. They did some really nice, I guess, booklets or books, whatever you want to call them. Those are great. What else? I think there's a new funnily enough, there's a new Mega Drive book coming out shortly, I think, which escapes me, which I'm going to pick up. And I think Kaz from The Guardian has just published a book about Nintendo. So I was going to check out that and have a look. But yeah, also a book about baseball stats, randomly enough. The Moneyball, if you remember the film with what's his name, Brad Pitt. So I went back and I'm reading the actual book itself. Within the context of stats and analytics and whatnot, which is kind of related vaguely to my day job, just to mix up a little bit.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I'm currently reading through the boss fight book on Final Fantasy V by Chris Kohler, which has been really fun. And then at my day job, I saw some coworkers reading The Road, the Cormac McCarthy book, and I have read that, but last year at San Diego Comic-Con, I purchased the graphic novel adaptation of The Road. So I thought it was the perfect time to break that out. And so I read a non-gaming book for the first time in a while and blasted through that in 2 days. But it's a really good, really well drawn, gritty and everything. Of course, it's a really dark story and everything, but really well done. So that's what I've been kind of catching up on too. But
look, I love the fact there's options out there, but yeah, it's not the same as going to a newsagent back in the day, I find, and just being able to scan the shelves and stuff. But yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I mean, my scanning of shelves is social media feeds, people resharing and posting things they like. So that's why it's really important. Obviously, if you're doing something creative, you got to promote yourself. Yes, but make posts every now and then about the things you're currently enjoying, or resharing things that you've seen from people you do endorse or you do because that's really the way that I discover new things now, because I you don't go into stores anymore and look at things or look at new releases or get exposed to things like in that old way. So like that is my like shelf shopping is sometimes it's like primarily all like social media feeds. So keep sharing
I
people.
guess it moves so fast too, right? That a post can come and go.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, definitely. If you see anything you like out there, anyone else's works, magazines, whatever, all your stuff, by all means, I encourage everyone to share it, spread the word, and let other people know about all the great stuff out there.
Yeah. Share the stuff you like. Obviously, if you don't like it, you don't need to share it. But if you do, it goes a long way, likely for the people who helped create it and are trying to get it in front of other eyes as well. So,
very true.
PSA for y'all. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's do an icebreaker, then we'll get to the main topic at hand. If you were a fighting game character, where would your stage location be?
Oh, God.
Everybody's got a unique stage, everyone's like, the back alley streets for the CD boxer and whatever it may be. Like, where would your stage be if you were in a fighting game?
That's so weird and random. I don't know. I'm going to go with some like random late 70s Japanese anime battleship, destroyer space thing. like Power Stone 2, okay?
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Like a Power Stone 2 Capcom type 70s Japanese anime warship destroyer for no reason other than that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. That works. That totally works. But okay, so now that I've made you oddly think about something you weren't expecting, let's talk about something you were expecting. We wanted to talk today about what is one of your favorite gaming systems, and really just kind of explore into that, like when you got it, the story behind it for you, some of your maybe favorite memories and games and all those types of things. But we already spoiled it. It is the Mega Drive, but yeah, tell us about that. What is it about the Mega Drive that you love, and what's your Mega Drive story?
Well, look, I think I got my Mega Drive when I was about 12 years old, give or take. I went from having Commodore 64 to the Mega Drive. And I think broadly, whichever console you get when you're like 12 year old is going to be one of your favorite, or you're going to have a sentimental attachment to that console. It could be a PS1, it could be a PS2, it could be Nintendo 64. When you're that age, you get your first console, it's going to be super cool and you're going to love it. So I appreciate it's going to be different for everyone. Look, for me, I guess, picked up the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis way back in the day when, you still had Altered Beast as the pack-in title. But I think more broadly, what I guess really, in hindsight makes me like the fact that the Mega Drive is that kind of exposed me to a world beyond my local suburbs, and the idea that there's a bunch of import gaming happening back then. So magazines cover games from Japan and all kinds of cool stuff that you might not be across or might not find in your local shop. And so I think that having that exposure to import gaming via Japan kind of helped broaden the world for me as a 12-year-old. This is like before the internet, right? They didn't have the internet. And so these magazines, whether it was EGM, whether it was Meme Machines, whether it was whatever it was, would talk about these games coming from Japan. And, it really paints a picture of a bigger world. And I guess that's kind of what Forgotten Worlds is about in a broader scope. Not just about the magazines back then. It's not just about the video games. It's about how those magazines and those video games impacted us as kids. And I guess, paints a picture of a wider world out there. And so for me, the Mega Drive was the entry point to that. You're 12 years old, still a kid, but you're aware there's something bigger out there. And so obviously, there's that. But it also had really cool games, to put it in simple terms. Sonic 1 is still a classic. Going from a Commodore 64 to the Mega Drive was a huge step up.
Yeah.
Being able to play Street Fighter 2, was massive. So just lots of fond memories that, and also my first zine came off the back of that, which we can get into a bit later. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. But you got it with Altered Beast as the game that was included. Yeah. I remember I bought mine secondhand. I convinced my parents to take me to a game store to sell my NES, and I thought I was going to get a bunch of money for it, and I didn't. So I had to save more money. But yeah, I remember having, I think maybe it was like a 3-in-1 game or like a 6-in-1 game. There was something like that they did, but it had columns. And I mean, just being exposed to columns, Altered Beast, and some of the early titles for it before I got some of the more heavy hitters in Sonic and things like that. But But yeah, what were your thoughts going from the Commodore 64 to the Mega Drive? Like when you first were playing through Altered Beast, like was just like your mind melted? Was it just like, like excitement on like, wow, you never thought games could look or play this way? Like what were your feelings?
I know that in hindsight, people tend to be dismissive of Altered Beast. But back then it was amazing. I mean, I'm not sure. I've never really played the arcade version, but it was pretty damn close. Mm-hmm. And going from, the Commodore 64 and the games you find on that, so shouts things like Airborne Ranger to Altered Beast and all those early Mega Drive games was amazing. So what else was there? I think it was a Castle of Illusion. You had Altered Beast. John Madden was, an amazing game. And Madden 92 is still one of my all-time favorites. It was definitely a step up from having an aging computer and looking through these magazines, seeing these amazing screenshots and going, yeah, well, mine doesn't look like that at home.
That's fun. Getting into it then, what were, obviously I'm assuming you had the 3-button controller at first.
Yes.
Did you dabble into those extra accessories down the road and get like the 6-button like pads or anything?
I paid like stupid money for a copy of Street Fighter 2. So I think it was in Australia like $120 for the cartridge plus $60 for the 6-button control pad. So it was like maybe $180 here, so $250 US. So like we're talking maybe $400 in today's money, to play Street Fighter 2 at home. So as a kid, I'm not even sure how I managed to afford that or where that money came from, but it was definitely worth it.
So then, let's get back into your timeline with the system. Then, what were some of those first like big games that? I mean, like you mentioned Sonic, but like where does it go from there? Like what were the other games that are still kind of like landmark and important to you, even looking back on it all these years later?
So I have a distinct memory of reading the John Madden 92 instruction manual, which is massive, back to back, because I actually broke my nose at school playing touch football of all things, and had to go to the hospital. And I didn't know my nose was broken until someone else in the field was like, bro, you okay? And I looked down and it's like blood pouring out onto my shirt.
Oh, wow.
And this is like way back in the day where I guess like schools were a bit less concerned about these things. So the coach was like, go and run your head under a tap. So I'm there at some football field, with my head under a tap, bleeding out, thinking I'm going to die from loss of blood. Long story short, I had to go to the hospital. And so while I'm waiting to see someone, for whatever reason, I went home first, grabbed the manual, and I'm reading this thing like back to back to back, to looking at all the team stats. And so Chicago was my Bears team back in the day. So obviously Madden 92 has a very distinct memory there. I remember, going to video store to rent games too, and I love Castle of Illusion. So I saw Fantasia there. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, wow. Castle of Illusion's amazing. It's Disney, it's Sega. How I'm sure Fantasia is going to be amazing. To this day, that remains one of the most frustrating games I've ever played in my life. If anyone has ever played or tried to play Fantasia, they'll know that the hit detection is non-existent. So I was ready to, if I've ever, I don't think I've ever actually thrown a control pad across the room or smashed one up, but that was probably as close as I ever got to it.
That's funny. That used to be one of the icebreaker questions I would ask is, do you have a memorable like controller throwing moment or one that got you close to it? But Castle of Illusion did it for you. Yeah.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, but long story short, we had this little strip mall near our place, and it's full of like shops from like Taiwan, Hong Kong back in the day, and they had like an import game shop there. To cut a long story short, I ended up getting myself a Magic Drive, which was a way to quote unquote back up your games onto like 3.25 inch floppy disks. So I'm not going to say piracy, but you can make of that what you will. But this system came from Taiwan and basically allowed you to back up or save Mega Drive games onto small disks, and so also that opened up a whole world of games that I could, I guess, acquire from a local Blockbuster. And instead of playing a bunch of like crazy, different, weird games that you'd never otherwise buy because who could afford to buy games? And that really got me into like weird strategy stuff too. So things like your Aerobiz, which is an amazing game to this day. Things like your Warrior of Rome 2, like an early real-time strategy game on the Mega Drive. So I was playing a bunch of stuff from like, the arcade stuff to platformers to more kind of intense strategy games, which I have no patience for these days. But
That's funny. Yeah, I remember. I mean, it had a really unique library. I mean, it had like games of all genres. I mean, like playing a lot of like NES games and older games. Like most of the time, you're like, the default genre was this like, like left to right scrolling, like platform action style game. But, then I was just really exposed to like so much more, within the Genesis and Mega Drive's like history. I loved like odd and weird games, like Vector Man, Comic Zone, Skitchin, like the Road Rash like knockoff, but on rollerblades. But there was so much there. What would you say are, they don't have to be like your 5 like favorite, like number 1 through 5, but what are just 5 games you think off the top of your head are all-time games for you from the Mega Drive?
It's obvious. I'll start with Sonic because I still have the classic original to this day. Music for Starlight Zone is amazing. Aerobiz is a strategy game where you run an airline company, and it's like digital crack. It's strangely compelling. So if you've never played an Aerobiz game, I do recommend those. Those are great. What else? Phantasy Star 3. I had no idea what I was doing. One of my first like JRPGs, expanded generations. I don't know how I finished it, or I'm sure I had a guide, but that one probably doesn't stand up as well. But I would love to see the old Phantasy Star games remastered in that HD 2D style.
That would be cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What else? Madden 92 is amazing. I love that game to this day. I think just that level of playability versus like it wasn't overly complex. You have to like spend years training to play that game. And what else? One more. I've got my magazine here in front of me. I'm going to flick this real quick and see what comes to mind. Maybe like a Shining in the Darkness is great. Toe Jam and Earl. Like a shooter, maybe like a troubleshooter. The shmup games. Those are fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
So I just like blurt out a bunch of names there.
Yeah, no, I mean it's like I said, it has a unique library. I mean, it is especially when it is like your one of your earliest like console memories and things like that one you pick and everything, like you just get so much more attached to the things you get and how you're exposed to them. And I think being at that age too, you're not getting brand new games like every other week or anything. You're really having to play the games that you have and get the most out of them, so you commit more time to them and you look at sometimes the rough because, yeah. But tell me about the zine then. I'm curious about this. How did this Mega Drive connection turn into one of your first zines? Like, what did you end up making and creating from that? So
I was reading, obviously a bunch of US magazines, one of which was video games and computer entertainment. And there's a column in there by a guy called Arnie Katz that looked at other people's zines and like profiled them, reviewed them. And so for whatever reason, I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. So I'd be making like little dumb magazines, for school, for projects. And so I launched a magazine called Neotech, which is basically just, A4, photocopied, black and white magazine about Mega Drive games. So, and I guess at the time, because like I said, I had the Magic Drive, I had my local video store. So I could go in and, rent these games and have backups of them at home. So I had access to a bunch of games. And in terms of the magazine, you literally, type the stuff up, I think on a typewriter, even in columns, you print it off, you slap it down on a piece of paper with like masking tape and glue. My mum worked as a librarian, so I'd get her to go in and, photocopy these. And I would sell them at my local, video shop, which they let me do for like $1 a piece. And then randomly one day I got a call. I happened to be off sick that day from school. And so this is like back in the day of landlines. The phone calls middle of the day, I pick it up. And it's the owner of the local video store. And he's like, I see that you're doing this magazine. It's cool. We need someone to help us choose which games we're going to buy to have available in our video shop. Would you be interested?
Oh, wow.
It was a very random phone call.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, it's amazing. So I think age, like what? I don't know. At that time, I was 13, 14, whatever it was. Yeah, so basically I would go down to the video store. They'd give me a list of all these video games. And they'd say, well, which ones should we buy to have available in the shop? And so obviously I would choose the ones that, I wanted to play. And did that for them. They sold the magazine for like $1 a pop. Did that for about 4 issues. Eventually sent off a copy of the magazine to Video Games and Computer Entertainment, and it was mentioned in a column. So I got in contact with other people from around the world. I can't find the actual magazine where I get mentioned, and it must have happened because people did actually reach out to me. So I know I'm not just imagining it. But I'm still trying to find out whether it was that magazine or maybe it was a different magazine that Arnie moved over to. But
I'll dig through them. I'll see if I can. I'll dig through because I'm going through right now and looking at old magazines anyway for research on one of my book things and all that stuff. So I'm gonna personally try and dig through this, and I'll see if I can find it for you. Yeah, that'll be cool.
Where it happened. And look, and I guess as a brief segue there. So the new issues of Forgotten Worlds is 7 and 8. They're out, very soon or now. But issue 8 is the first kind of zine annual, and the idea is, I'm going to basically combine or bring together all the cool magazines from around the world that people are doing, showcase them in an actual physical magazine, which is, I guess, a nod to that column back in the day and that culture from back in the day and what got my start. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I think by the time this airs, this isn't like live TV or anything. By the time this is published and released and available to listen to and download, those will be out, because I think you talked about it being, you wanted it out on February 6th?
6th of February, yeah. So it should be out, yeah.
Yeah, so your last episode will be released on February 6th. So this episode, people will be listening to a few weeks after that. So if you are hearing this as it is new, run right to the internet and go to forgottenworlds.net, and hopefully you can still grab yourself a copy, because you don't mass produce these things. These aren't things that you're just churning and burning on. These are nice collectors, for fans, for folks. Yeah.
I don't know what everyone else does, what the print runs are, but I do 250 copies. That's it. So just a nice kind of, I guess, clean, tidy print run. So yeah,
you have nothing to worry about from logistics side of things, and having to have a garage or closet full of old ones to handle. Once you're done, you're done. You did your part.
Look, that's the thing, right? I've got a day job. We all have jobs, so we try to make these things as manageable as possible.
Yeah, fun. Well, any other final thoughts then on the Mega Drive? How does the Mega Drive stack up now? Would you say it's your favorite console of all time, or have things surpassed it since then?
I think it's my most sentimental console. I think that I think Sega have re-released various games so many times. It's really easy to access them. I've played them a bunch of times. I think the games stack up really well. So it's definitely my most sentimental console. But I think the Sega Saturn is kind of neck and neck, just for its kind of weird place in history, in terms of that progression there, and almost like that weird mid-90s crossover between the old and the new. But look, gun to head, I'm going to say Mega Drive / Sega Genesis.
Fun. Yeah. The Saturn is, of all the major consoles, from a North American release standpoint, essentially, the Saturn is the only one. I've never physically owned one, never had one back in my home to play, any amount, on. I've had everything else by everybody else, but never the Saturn. I had a cousin who had it, and I remember I always thought it was interesting because I wanted to try it because I had a PlayStation at the time, and he brought it over once, and he was able to convince his parents to take it out from his house, and brought it over and booted up, put in Independence Day to convince me that this was a game I must own and a system I must play it on, and I was just unimpressed by Independence Day and the Sega Saturn. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to run out, and try and demand that my parents buy me one anytime soon. If that's all that it is, I'm good. But
I mean, funny enough, I had a real sliding doors moment. So I got my Saturn, I never had one back in the day. I got it many years later in Japan, when I was literally at Super Potato in Akihabara to buy something. I was going to buy a console, and I was going in there originally to buy a Neo Geo, but I looked at the size of the console, right, and then the game's like bricks. And I was like, I only have so much space in my luggage to bring something home. And I looked over at the Saturn, and the games are in nice little console, I guess, CD cases. So it was basically a coin toss between that and then the Neo Geo. So I went with the Saturn ultimately, and it became one of my favorites. So yeah.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah, they had those the Japanese games for the Saturn were in those standard CD jewel cases, so super compact. They didn't use big long box ones out there, at least not that I know of. I've got import copy of Snatcher for the Saturn, and it's just in that nice little CD jewel case and everything. So nice and compact and easy to put on a shelf.
But look back to Mega Drive, I guess, and just to wrap up, I guess the magazines too, because obviously that was like the golden age of magazines for consoles. And I'm about to publish, I have published an article recently talking about the difference between the US and the UK. And how the US tend to have more multi-format magazines, whereas in the UK there was like specialist magazines for different consoles, and so there was like a ton of Mega Drive magazines. So if you go through my like Graham collection of old magazines, that was kind of like the heyday where there might be several different magazines, and I was buying them all. So I think also given the whole premise of Forgotten Worlds and magazines, and just how much is getting poured out into the world back then. There's some really great magazines, really iconic magazines, and they really sort of capture a moment in time. So yeah.
That's fun. Well, that's it. That's the Mega Drive story. That's Mikolai's story there. Thank you for sharing and coming on another episode. We'll definitely have you on in the future. I know it's a unique time difference from where we're at, but we'll make it work. I'd love to have you on.
I'm more than happy. And
anything else?
So good.
Oh yeah. Because it's early morning for you, and getting into mid-afternoon for me here. Any other things you want to plug or share? Obviously, the new episode or new issues. If you hopefully by the time people are listening to this, they can go grab those. But they'll also be able to listen to the new episode and grab them then if they wanted to. But anything else you wanted to plug or share or? Yes. Highlight.
Big thank you, Darren. Really appreciate you having me on. You're doing amazing work, so thank you. Appreciate it. If anyone's listening that's interested in I guess old school video game magazines and the culture around that, visit forgottenworlds.net. There's a bunch of interviews with folks from back in the day, articles, and you can also purchase your copies of the magazines from there.
Perfect. All right. Well, Mikolai, thank you for joining. I'm excited to talk to you again in the future. And if I find that article or that little entry in VGME, I'll let you know.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a great afternoon. Thanks, thank you, everyone, for listening. And you have a great afternoon. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Listen to Flashback 64, the chronological Nintendo 64 podcast. Hosts Gooey, McKenna, and friends flashback to the 90s and early 2000s with a look at the Nintendo 64's catalog and its contemporary cultural and historical context. Starting with the console's launch titles and proceeding in release order, we discuss classics like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Star Fox 64, as well as some not-so-beloved games, lesser-known titles, and everything in between. Along with game-specific deep dives, we also cover other bits of pop culture from the time, like films, music, and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.